Hey guys, it's Coach Matt with Lifelong Recovery. In this video, I'm going to talk about what to do when you feel yourself starting to slip in sobriety. So there's a moment before relapse where you can feel yourself starting to slip usually. Your thoughts will get heavier, your emotions get louder, and you generally just have this feeling of not caring as much anymore. Most people don't know what to do in those moments. That's usually where things will go sideways. So when people have this feeling of their sobriety starting to slip, typically what that looks like is people will have these ruminating thoughts. Their thoughts will just kind of like repeat this pattern, these kind of looping thoughts. People typically have low motivation. They're just exhausted. I mean, if you think about it, especially in early recovery, talking about like the first days, weeks, first month, even. Um, Typically, it's a pretty significant amount of effort to maintain that sobriety because your brain has just been kind of running on this loop of using and it's it's responsible for a lot of times people's feeling of well-being, their feeling of confidence, their feeling of relaxation. So you can imagine, if I've been doing that for years, then just all of a sudden taking that away, my brain is going to struggle to adjust. Emotions are being awakened for the first time in a long time. People are actually feeling their feelings for the first time. So they go through this period of emotional fatigue. It's just exhausting because the brain is not used to it, right? Again, the brain is kind of used to running on autopilot with this chemical satisfaction, so to speak. And it can vary depending on the different substances, what kind of feelings that the person is getting. I mean, that's what addiction is, right? You're dependent on the substance for your just everyday functioning. Now, whether how well you're functioning is a different story, right? But nonetheless, your brain is dependent on it for its everyday kind of routine. So, a lot of times people get into this like, what's the point feeling? I described it earlier as like a fuck it attitude. Just this feeling of kind of like, what am I doing this for? People can get exhausted, they can get, disheartened, I would say. They can get frustrated very easily, for different reasons. One of the big things I find is that people get frustrated because even though they are trying to live a different way. They're trying to do things like, one of the things you hear in recovery and 12-step meetings is do the next right thing. So even though they're trying to do things different, they're trying to do things, be a good person, quote unquote, and do things the right, quote unquote, way, that they feel like they're not getting the recognition, they're not getting the rewards for it, they're not seeing kind of the fruits of their labors. Like, to give an example of this, I think back to when I was about probably about a month sober, and for whatever reason, my mom just suspected that I had relapsed. I can't remember exactly what had happened, but she was suspicious of me, right? And I had been sober, I was being honest, I was doing the next right thing, all those things that I was told to do in recovery. And her suspicion of me really, it kind of just made me feel like, what's the point? What am I doing this for anyways? If nobody's going to believe me, then why am I even doing this? If I'm not gaining that trust back, why am I even doing that kind of thing? And so luckily, um, I called my sponsor and told him my frustrations, which we're going to talk about. That's a huge thing to do when you're feeling your sobriety start to slip, is talk to somebody about the way that you're feeling. Don't just hold it inside. Okay. Don't just try and, snap yourself out of it, that kind of thing. But I told my sponsor the way that I was feeling, and he said something very appropriate. He asked me how long I had been drinking and using, to which my answer was like 12 or 13 years. And he said, "How long have you been sober?" And I said, "About a month." And he said, okay, well, that's going to happen, right? People aren't going to automatically just trust you. You've been doing something on repeat, rinse and repeat for 13 years, and now you've been doing something different for a month. It's normal for people to be leery of the new you, right? Not that they don't want you to do it. My mom was very supportive of me, but just was, I had lied to her. I had misguided her. I had told her at periods I had stopped. It was hard for her to trust anything that was coming out of my mouth at that point, right? So, again, my sponsor reminding me, like, hey man, trust takes time to rebuild. That was something that I needed in that moment to flip the way that I was thinking, right? I had to kind of put things into perspective and be humble, if that makes sense. So, again, those looping thoughts, the low motivation, the emotional fatigue, the case of the fuckets, all those things can create that feeling of slipping. And literally you can feel the sobriety sometimes slipping out of your fingers. So the mistake that most people make in this scenario is that they try and think their way out of it. Okay. Or they isolate. They try and wait it out, pretend it's not happening. That usually makes it worse, right? So the thing to do instead is to change what you're doing. So what's going on in those moments is basically your brain is trying to get you to return to the using, because your brain has become so adjusted to the drinking or using that it's kind of freaking out without it, right? So it's like, what the fuck is going on? Give me my shit. I need this stuff to maintain. We need it, right? It's not just like the brain. It's like it's kind of this like joint venture. Like, hey man, we were in agreement that we were going to drink or use to get ourselves through the day, right? Now you've taken that away. What the fuck are you doing? So a lot of times in these moments, it can feel like you're literally fighting your brain, and it can feel like a losing battle. So this is where we need help. Okay, this is where the worst thing to do is to just isolate and try to think ourselves out of the situation. What's going on, though, the more that you are thinking about addiction as a medical issue, okay, as a disease of the brain, just like you would think of heart disease as a disease of the heart. The only difference is the brain is responsible for your thinking, right? Your thoughts and your behavior. So your heart, right, it's responsible for pumping the blood. So if I have heart disease, then it's probably going to have an issue. I'm not a doctor, guys, but you know what I'm saying. It's going to probably have an issue pumping the blood and whatever. Maybe you can take medication, change your eating habits, this, that, and the other. With the brain, it's not so simple, right? There's not just a magic pill that I can take. I can't just change my eating habits. Now, that may actually help, but I can't just do that. Usually I have to radically change what's going on in my life, my environment, and you'll hear in 12-step recovery, they say change people, places, and things, or nouns, as I like to say. That's a lot, right? So basically, if I'm left to my own devices, it's probably not going to work out so well for me. Not saying that people don't recover on their own, they do, but usually they change some things. So, the worst thing to do in this moment is to try and just think your way out of it. So, to give an example of this, when I was probably within a week sober, okay? I can remember literally trying to will myself out of drinking, right? So I can remember for like 45 minutes just thinking, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink. And that was just maybe making the cravings worse. And after those 45 minutes, I ended up drinking again, right? Because it was like I was just obsessing over it, right? And that's kind of what a craving is, right? It's this compulsion, it's this obsession. So the, white knuckling, as they call it, just I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use. A lot of times that doesn't work because you're kind of just feeding into the feeling itself. So, first thing to do, change your environment, change your state. Don't worry about changing your thoughts. Get out of the environment that you're in. Go move your body. Go for a walk. Go outside. If you can go outside, that's the best thing to do in changing your environment. At least change rooms, right? Just go somewhere other than where you are in the moment, okay? That can actually trigger a changing of your thought patterns, right? It can interrupt the pattern. The next thing to do, say how you're feeling out loud. And this is why the talking to somebody, this is where that can be so beneficial. Now, it doesn't have to be a sponsor, right? It can be just someone who cares about you, someone who's supportive of you. It can be a recovery professional, a counselor, a recovery coach like me, just a friend, a family member, whatever. But be real about how you're feeling. Don't keep it inside and don't try and just fix it yourself. So say it out loud. I feel like I'm slipping in my recovery. I feel like I might relapse. So a lot of people are afraid to say this because it's almost like they think it's going to like make it come true. Like they're going to manifest the relapse, but it's actually the opposite. When you say how you're feeling, I feel like I might relapse. I feel like I'm slipping. This kind of just, it almost like it takes the air out of it a little bit and makes it easier to get through. Because it's almost like this impending doom when you're not talking about it, when you're stuck inside your head and you're thinking about how you want to relapse, you're thinking about craving. It's like it's ominous and it's almost just like building steam, right? So the moment that I actually talk about it, I tell somebody how I'm really feeling, that takes some of the air out of it and makes me more likely to be able to handle it. The worst thing you can do is say, I'm fine. In meetings, I've heard people say this. When I was working in treatment, I heard this a lot. So counselors would say, like, FINE stands, FINE stands for fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Okay. So don't just say you're fine when you're not. We need authenticity. We need vulnerability in recovery, right? We need to actually be aware of how we're feeling, and we need to not only recognize it, but probably say it out loud. Telling somebody else how we're feeling is the best thing to do.